How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to an episode here on Let's Build Twitter. As always, I'm Ethan, or Unknown Coder, your favorite underqualified senior software engineer. And as always, if you guys do want access to a private repository, there's a link in the description down below that'll walk you through exactly how to gain access to that. Now, that being said, let's go ahead and hop into what we're working on today. Today, we're going to go ahead and get it set up so we can go ahead and click on this list page, fetch some suggested lists, and then maybe just display a little bit of information from it. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and continue working on it and refining it. So with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into the code and get to work here. I'm going to be working in the front end today, and the first thing we need to go ahead and do is go to our utils and our global interfaces, and we need to go ahead and set up a new interface for this new custom feed that we just created. So let's go ahead and scroll to the bottom here. We'll just put it at the very bottom. Go ahead and say export interface, and this is going to be a custom feed, and then inside of our custom feed we'll have an ID, which is a number. We'll go ahead and have our name of string, we'll have our description of string, and then we'll have an image, which is a post image, and then we will have a private list, which is going to be a boolean. I have our members, which is a user array, and then we'll have our creator, which is a user, and we'll have followers, which is a user array, and then finally we'll have pinned by, which is user array. That looks good. Now let's go ahead and set up a new slice to actually be able to fetch this information. Let's go in Redux, go ahead and create a new slice inside slices. Call this ListsSlice.ts. Let's go and hop into our list slice. So we need to set up our state and a couple other things. So interface, and actually let's leave some space to import stuff. So interface, and this will be called our ListsSlice state. Inside, we'll go ahead and have a loading list to be a boolean. We'll have a loading suggested. Actually, I think we call it suggestions, which is a boolean. And then we'll also go ahead and have our list. This will go ahead and be a custom feed array. And we'll also have our suggested, which is a custom feed array as well. That looks good. Next, we'll also have an interface for our suggested list request. So here, this is going to go ahead and need a user ID of a number. It's going to need an amount of a number, and it's also going to need a token of type string. Looks good. And then const initial state. This is going to go be our ListsSlice state equal to, and here we're going to go ahead and have loading list starting out as false, have loading suggestions as false, list will be an empty array, and suggested will be an empty array. We probably could have called this suggestions, but it is what it is. So now I'm going to go ahead and set up the slice really quick, and then we'll need to set up some like extra reducers and stuff, but we're going to go and say export const ListsSlice. And this is going to equal to create slice. Go ahead and bring that in like so. And then inside we'll have our name, which we'll go ahead and set to list. And then we'll have an initial state. Reducers will be empty. And that should set that up for us. I just wanted to get our slice set up really quick before we get into our async thunks. So export const, and this will be fetch list for logged in user equal to create async thunk. Like so. And then in here, we're going to go ahead and have list/get. And then after this, we'll go ahead and have our async. And here we'll have our payload. I got a little bit lazy here. We're just going to have a user type user and a token type string. I could have made that in its own object, but it is what it is. Got a little bit lazy, and go ahead and set up our arrow function. Set up a try catch. Now, in a normal scenario, this shouldn't fail unless it's like a 404. But then again, this should be logged in to even see this page. So I'm not that concerned about it. Thunk API dot reject with value, pass in E. And then here we'll go ahead and say const res equal to await axios dot, and then this is going to be a post. This will be http :// and then localhost :8000 /list/user, and then here we need to go ahead and pass in payload.user, and then we also need to set up our headers. So inside here, we'll go ahead and say headers and set up an object for our headers, and then this will be authorization. authorization colon backticks bear $curly brace payload dot token. So now we pass our token, and then we can just return our res dot data. So that will do it for that. Let's go ahead and import our user, and let's see, what did I do wrong here? Need to probably close that. There we go, looks good. And then what did we do wrong here? There we go. Now we're also going to export const, and this is going to be fetch suggested lists, and then equal to create async, maybe thunk. And then inside here, once again, we'll go ahead and have our list slash suggested, comma, async. We'll set up our async function. Here, we're going to go ahead and say payload is going to be a suggested list request. I spelled suggested list request wrong. Let's go ahead and fix that. So suggest with an S, suggested list request. There we go. And we'll also go ahead and set up our thunk API, and our arrow function here. Once again, we'll set up a try, maybe a try and a catch an error E, and then we'll return thunk API dot reject with value, pass in E. And then inside the try, we'll go ahead and say const res, go to await, and axios dot post. And then here we'll go ahead and say http / localhost 8000 / list / suggested, comma. We're going to go ahead and set up a payload. So user ID here is going to be payload user ID, and then our amount will be payload amount. And we need to also go ahead and set up our header. So let's go ahead and do that. So set this guy up, and then here we'll go ahead and have headers, which is a object, have our authorization backticks, and then bear $curly brace payload dot token. So that should go ahead and do that. Then we just need to go ahead and return res dot data, and this will go ahead and fetch any of the lists that we are following or we created personally, then also fetch any lists that someone else created. So now all we need to go ahead and do is come into our reducers here, go ahead and come below reducers, and we're going to go ahead and say extra reducers, set up the builder. So first say builder dot add case, and then here we're going to say fetch list, and then for logged in user dot pending, and then we'll go ahead and make sure we spell pending right. We'll have our state and action, and here we're basically just going to go ahead and say return dot state, and then this is going to be loading list true. And then we'll go ahead and have our next builder. So builder to add case. This one's going to be fetch and then suggested list dot pending. And then here we're going to go ahead and have state action return dot state, and then this one be loading suggestions as true. Then we'll have builder to add case, and then here we fetch list for logged in user dot fulfilled, and then we'll have our state and action. And then inside of fulfilled for our logged in user, we're just going to go ahead and return dot state, comma, loading list will be false. And we'll also go ahead and say list is action dot payload. So that one's pretty simple. And then we'll have builder dot add case. Here this will be fetch suggested lists dot fulfilled. And then we'll have our state and our action. Once again, this will be pretty simple. Return and then dot state. And then we'll have loading suggestions as false. And then we'll have suggested. We'll go ahead and be action dot payload. Finally, we'll have builder dot add case. And then this would be fetch logged in list, basically, dot rejected. And then we'll have our state and action. And here return dot state. And then once again, we want loading list to be false. So even if it failed, we don't want to be loading anymore. And then builder to add case. And then here we fetch suggested list, and then here dot rejected, and then we'll have our state and action, and then we return dot 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 state, dot 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 state, and then loading suggestions as false. So we want to make sure that we set those to false so they're not constantly loading. We're going to go ahead and say export const. I don't know if this is going to actually work, but we don't have any reducers, so we're going to say list slice dot actions, and we're going to say export default default list slice dot reducer. That's fine. We're going to have some actions later on, but for now we don't. Now let's hop into the Redux store. Inside the Redux store, let's go and first we'll set up the new slice here. So we're going to go ahead and say list be list slice and then reducer like so, and then we'll import list slice reducer from there. That's fine. And then that should do that. And then now we can go ahead and start creating some stuff in here. So we need a default page more or less. So let's go ahead and say create lists page.tsx. We're also going to go ahead and create a list page.css. It's very simple CSS. Hop into here. So let's import React from React like we do. And then we'll export default function. And this will be called list page. And we're just going to go ahead and create a very simple list page to start. Inside the list page, we're going to say const and then logged in, and token is going to be equal to use selector. And then inside our use selector, we'll say state root state like so. And then this is going to be state.user. And then we'll also go and create const dispatch. And this is going to be an app dispatch equal to use dispatch like so. Looks good. And then we'll need a use effect, but for now let's just go ahead and set up the return statement. So return, and inside the return of a div, the class name equal to list dash page, and then here we're going to have a list a list top bar that we'll work on. We're going to go ahead and have a discover discover list. Let me actually do this properly. Discover list. And then we'll also go ahead and have a your list. So we'll go through and we'll fix all this stuff up eventually. It's not going to be able to be done all in this episode, so that's why we're kind of breaking it up. Now we'll go ahead and set up our use effect. Now that we have a return inside the use effect, we're just going to watch logged in and token. And then if we have a logged in and token, we're going to say if logged in and token. So we're logged in, we fetched our token. We're going to go and dispatch, and we're going to dispatch fetch list for a logged in user. Here we want to go ahead and pass in user is logged in, and token is token. And we're also going to go ahead and below this dispatch, we're going to go ahead and dispatch another one, fetch suggested list. Let's go ahead and pass in an object. Here, user ID will be logged in dot user ID. We'll have our amount. For this page, it's going to be 3, and then we'll have our token. So that'll go ahead and fetch the data for us whenever we load into this page. And assuming that everything's working, it should be fine. For now, this is going to be empty because we haven't made any, and I don't know if we're going to. Maybe I'll hop on Postman a little bit later on and do it, but we'll see. But now we're ready to go ahead and style this guy before we throw it in. So let's go ahead and open up the style. And here we're going to go ahead and have .list dash page. And inside this page, we're going to set width to 100%. We'll go ahead and say height will just be fit dash content. We're going to go ahead and have a min dash height on this guy of 100 view height. And then we're going to go ahead and have a display, display. I cannot type all of a sudden. My goodness. Display : flex. We're going to go ahead and flex dash direction in the column. We're going to go ahead and justify content in the flex start. We're going to align items in the center. And then we're going to have a border dash left of 1 px, solid pound. And this is going to be AAB8, AAB8, C2, And then we're going to also do a border right the same way. So I'm just going to copy this really quick. So copy, and then let's go and paste it in. And then this is going to be border right. So let's go ahead and change that to border right, 1px, and that's going to be the light gray color. Now let's go ahead and add this to our routing, our app.tsx. Let's come down here to create some new routes. So I'm just going to put this below explore. It doesn't really matter where this goes. And we're going to go ahead and have a route. Path will go ahead and be equal to /list. Element is going to be equal to our list page. Whoops. List page, like so. And then we're going to have a couple other routes that also belong to like list. So route path is equal to /list/suggested. And then element will equal to, and then we're just going to go ahead and make a placeholder for now. This is going to be suggested list. We're not setting this up for now. We'll set it up later. Then path is going to be equal to /list/list ID. Again, we'll set this up later. Element equal to, and then this will be like a custom feed component that we'll set up eventually and make sure we closed everything. That looks good. And then we also need to go ahead and set up to be able to actually navigate to this. So let's hop into our navigation component, and inside navigation, let's go ahead and scroll down to where we have our list. So here we have our list SVG. So now we want this link to go to /list. Let's go ahead and fix that. So /list, like so. Save that up, and now that should be everything. So if we hop back into our front end really quick, I'm going to go and open up our inspect window, and let's just go into network to make sure that we are making the API calls whenever we do this. So let's go and refresh. Now let's go to list. It goes to our list, and we can see they called it twice. It is what it is. It's just how it's going to work. We have our suggested. So this should actually return some stuff. So we have 3, and then user is just going to return an empty list because the user hasn't created anything. We can see this guy is kind of working. The reason why I say kind of is because these are fragments, so they kind of act like spans, but that is good. So now let's go ahead and set up like the rest of our skeleton components and kind of display some of the list in simple format before wrapping up this episode. This one's going to be a little bit shorter, which is good because the last episode literally took a toll on me trying to debug and everything. So now let's go ahead and open up our Explorer, and we're going to go into our features, and we're going to go ahead and make a list directory, and then we're going to go ahead and make a components directory. We're going to go ahead and make a list top bar directory, list top bar.tsx, and we're going to go ahead and make a list top bar.css. So let's go ahead and make our skeleton component for this guy. So we're going to go ahead and import React from React as we do. And then we'll also go and import our // and I forgot to import the CSS for the list page. We'll go back and do that. But let's also go ahead and import the list top bar.css, and we'll go and export const list top bar is a react.function component. This shouldn't take in any props. And then here we're first going to say const navigate equal to use navigate, like so. That looks good. And then we're going to go ahead and return. Let's go ahead and return a div. So here, div class name equal to list top bar. Inside of our list top bar, we'll have a div with a class name equal to list top bar dash svg dash wrapper, because we're going to reuse this a couple times. On click, we'll set up in a second with that use navigate. And then we'll go ahead and do this. And then here we're going to have an arrow back for material UI, SX equal to, and then width on this guy will be 20, px. And then we'll have a height on it of about 20 px. Looks good. And then let's go ahead and create this. So we're going to say const navigate back is going to be equal to an arrow function. And then in here, we're going to say if. We also need location, which I did not bring in. Let me go ahead and say const location is equal to use location. I don't know how I forgot that, but location dot path name equal to /list. So if we're on /list, we're going to navigate to /home, right? And then we'll just return. And let me make sure we actually say if here. So if we're in the list, we'll navigate home. If we're somewhere else inside list, we'll navigate back to /list. So Like if we're in like suggested or something, we'll navigate back to where we started inside of list. And we could just do like the back arrow or something, or like the history. But I think this will work for now, and then we'll go ahead and call navigate back like so. And we're not actually doing anything with the CSS for now, so that's fine. Next, let's go ahead and open up our Explorer. Inside of our components, we're going to go ahead and set up a discover list / discover list.tsx and a discover list.css. Go ahead and hop in here. Let's import React from React, then also import our / discover, discover list.css, then export const and discover, oh my goodness, list react.fc. This one also is not going to take in any props, so we're good to go here. And then we're going to return, we'll have a div with a class name equal to discover, maybe if I could type -list. Now that we have that set up, let's go and bring in our state. So const and loading suggestions, comma, suggested is equal to use selector. Go and bring that in of our state and maybe root state. And we'll go ahead and say state.list. So now we have, if we're loading and whatnot, so we're going to go ahead and have an h3 class name equal to discover, maybe cannot spell discover -list header, and inside we're just going to go ahead and say discover new list, and we're going to have a set of curly braces below that, and then this is going to go ahead and check for loading suggestions. If we are loading, we're going to go ahead and say circular progress from mature UI, and size is going to equal 220. And then we're going to go ahead and have SX. We're going to have a color on this, and this is going to be pound 1DA1 F2, which is going to be the Twitter blue. So if we're not loading, then we're going to go ahead and have a div class name equal to be discover -lists -list. Not a cool name, but it's going to be the list of the lists that we discovered basically. And then suggested.map. We're going to go map through each list, and this is what I meant by we're just going to do something very simple for now. It's going to go return a p, and then this is just going to say list dot name like so, and then below this div we'll also have a div with a class name equal to discover -learn, I guess is list -learn -more. And then in here, I don't know why this is mad at us. I don't know if I forgot to close something or what's going on with this. We'll figure out in a second. Div, that's closed, that's closed. I don't know what's wrong with this div. We'll figure it out in a sec. And this is just going to go ahead and say show more. Okay, what is going on here? We want this outside, I guess. I don't think we really want this outside of loading suggestions, but it is what it is. We'll keep it that way. That's fine. And then we're also going to go ahead and set up one more skeleton component. So this is going to go ahead and be your list.tsx, and then your list.css. Hop in here, import React from React, then also import the / your list.css. Looks good. Export const your list is a react.fc arrow function, and then here we'll go ahead and return. We'll have a div with a class name equal to your -list, and this one's going to be very similar as well. At the top, we're going to go ahead and have const, and then logged in equal to use selector, and here we'll have our state root state. If I could type, that'd be cool. I don't know why root state doesn't want to import, but it is what it is. This would be state.user. Let's figure out what's going on with the root state here. So bring it in. There we go. And then we'll also go ahead and want a const of our list and our loading list. equal to use selector. We'll have our state root state. And this will be state.list. So now we got that stuff. We can go ahead and set this up. So I have an h3 once again. This will be a class name equal to your list header. Inside, we'll just have your list, so the ones that we created and followed. And then once again, whoops, we'll go ahead and have curly braces. So a loading list question mark. So if we are loading list, once again, we'll have a circular progress. Size we'll set to 20. SX equal to color, colon, and then pound 1D, A1, F2. Hopefully I remember the pound on the last one. We'll find out in a sec. And then otherwise, we'll just go ahead and have a div for the class name. Whoops. Name equal to, this will be your dash list. List again. Not very pretty, but it is what it is. Please let me, there we go. And then we'll go ahead and say list.map, map through each list. And once again, we're just going to go ahead and return a P, whoops, a P with our list.name, so we can at least see that we have some there. And that is all we have for this one. We aren't using logged in yet. I don't know why I brought it in, but it is what it is. Now finally, let's go ahead and hop back in to our list page, and let's make sure one, we import the CSS. So import /list page.css. Then we're going to go and bring in all of these little placeholder elements that we'll go ahead and fill out as we go. So list top bar, we'll have our discover list. So let's go and say discover discover list. There we go. And we'll have your list right here. So your list, like so. Looks good. Cool. That should be good to go. So now let's hop into Postman and actually log in as unknown coder. So myself, gonna pass in login myself. Go and copy the token. Let's copy this guy. Let's go into our create one. We'll go ahead and put the user ID to 5. We'll go into our headers and we'll replace the bearer token with my bearer token. And then we're going to go ahead and hop into the body and say test list by me. And we'll say, I am creating a test list. And hopefully, fingers crossed, it doesn't break. Cool. Test list by me. So now we can see if we refresh, we can see this didn't work because I think I forgot to uncomment a line inside the backend. Let me double check really quick. There we go. I had made some comments previously whenever I was debugging. So that kind of commented out the filtering of our own post, our own list. So there we go. So now if we refresh a couple times, you should see these kind of change a little bit. We don't really see the loading because it doesn't go that slowly, but I think it looks pretty good. So I think that's where we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Next episode, we're going to go ahead and start working on the top search bar. That way, whenever we are trying to search or try to go back or whatnot, we go back and this should take us back to the home page and everything else. So that's going to go ahead and do it. If you guys did enjoy, please like, comment, and subscribe. Everything helps out here with the YouTube algorithm. If you guys do want to see where we start from absolute scratch to get to the point right now, there's a place, an end card coming right up. With that being said, y'all, this has been Ethan, our Unknown Coder. Hope you have a great day. I'll see you all in the next video.